Okay.
All right, Madam.
Go ahead, Miguel. I'm going to hand it over to you, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, Madam Clerk.
All right, Mr. Vice Mayor, we're moving on to item C6.
Thanks so much. Is there any public comment on this item?
We do have public comment on this item. Our first public commenter is Eddie Lorton, followed by Tom Dunn, followed by Ron P. Dreher.
Vice Mayor Martinez, I have a disclosure to read before we do public comment.
Go ahead, Councilmember Reese.
Thank you so much. Madam Mayor, fellow city council members and city staff, I am a partner at the law firm of Reese Ring Velto PLLC, which represents a member of Local 731 in another jurisdiction on a matter unrelated to the city of Reno. C6 and C7 involve agreements for labor negotiations, legal services with Simons Hall Johnston Professional Corporation. On this matter, I've sought guidance from the city attorney's office pursuant to NRS 281A.065, 4, and 5. I have a commitment and private capacity to my employer and my colleague handling that legal matter. Because of this, I also have a pecuniary interest in that legal matter. Consequently, in the appendance of judgment of a reasonable person in my situation could be materially affected in acting and voting on these items. In order to avoid the appearance of impropriety and comply with the ethics law, I will recuse myself and leave the room. Madam Clerk, please accept this disclosure and lodge it on the record for this meeting pertaining to these two agenda items.
Thank you, Councilmember Reese. Mr. Lorton,
Tell me when you're ready.
ready whenever you are, sir.
All right, my name's George Eddie Lorton, and Devin, I'm proud of you for that, because I was going to mention that. So I'm glad he recused himself, because they do represent the union, so that was good. So now, I'm for police and fire, okay? We need them all the time. That's part of our city job here, police, fire, public works. They should come funded first. Like, I don't understand giving the $1 million to the ballpark. You say it's a different fund, but it's all our money. And then when it comes to, like the art and stuff like that, all you have to do is a resolution to change that money to be spent in our general fund. That's how they put it towards art off the room tax. 1.8 million a year could be used for our police and fire. So like I said before, there's so many ways and so many opportunities that we're missing out on to make money at this city. They're just, everything doesn't work quite right. I mean, and that's just it. You're here serving, trying to do a good job for our people. I understand that. But there's just so many things you have to learn here, when you're in those seats. And I understand there's a lot of missed opportunity. Me being from the business world, I see lots of opportunities. Maybe you don't. And I'm sure you see things that I don't see. But we're missing out on a lot of money from audits, things like that. And like I mentioned before, it'd be an audit, a hands-on audit. I'm not just gonna trust their figures. You should post someone down there and see the weights coming in and make sure all the Reno trash goes there at the substation and you get your fees out of that instead of half of it going out to Story County. And by the way, they only charge a 4% franchise fee. So when you're keeping track of everything, let's mention that. But I know all these things that through the years I've learned and I've invested in these kind of businesses for a long time. So I could help you here, but I'm not for hiring special counsel. Carl Hall's a good lawyer, and his team's good lawyers, okay? And I think they can handle it to where I hope police and fire, everybody can't have everything. I think they know we're in a budget constraint, and I think maybe they know they can't get everything, but it's a no-win scenario for whoever handles it, because everybody wants everything they can get, and I understand that. But our police and fire shouldn't be shorted, and they should get what they have coming. They put their lives on the line every day for us, me and you, and I'm there for them and you as well. So I'm hoping maybe Carl can deal with this, and then that way, we don't have extra money blowing out the door and all these things. I think they're gonna be more reasonable, and I hope they know the situation here. We love our city, we're all gotta contribute, and two, I don't ever wanna really get negative, but I've reviewed some of these staff pays, and man, they're pretty high. I mean, if you go around and look, and don't compare it to other places and stuff, I mean, from here, a lot of this staff is the pay is super high on certain positions, so that should be reviewed too. I mean, I'm just trying to save us money, save us grace here to where I think Carl and his team could do a good job. I'm not out for special counsel to spend all this extra money again. If we can't be selective on our budgets, either we're gonna save money and try to make it through, or we're gonna blow it on certain things, and certain things we're not. Let's be uniform across the line so we can bring this under control. And Jack, you are doing a good job trying to shuffle everything, and we appreciate that. You know, it's been a while since we had a city manager with an opinion that's trying to do good things. So, but please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lorton.
Tom Dunn, followed by Ron Dreher.
Good afternoon, Mr. Vice Mayor, members of council. For the record, Tom Dunn, Vice President of Reno Firefighters Association. I feel like this is Groundhog Day again, that we have been at this podium in 2014 and 2020 talking about the same exact issue. Complex labor negotiations, as identified in the staff report, is a paradox. You get out of it what you put into it. Labor issues do not need to be complex. Negotiations are a process that should be based on history and trust and leads to consensus. Think of the message this agenda item sends to your employees today. Billable hours from a contractor is not a benchmark for success. In 2014, the city of Reno hired an outside firm that fleeced the taxpayers of over $750,000 and accomplished nothing, but came to council every 90 days for an increase. In 2020, the city of Reno hired an outside firm for over $250,000. The negotiator just happened to be the spouse of a former HR director of this city and accomplished nothing. They also came to council at least once for an increase. In 2026, as of the city's online checkbook, the city has paid Simons Hall Johnson $129,690, and Local 731 is 226 days without a signed contract with the city. Your contractor has no skin in this game, does not understand the history or the documentation that your employees and bargaining units do. We respectfully request that you reconsider this agenda item today. Thank you.
Ron P. Dreher.
Good afternoon, Vice Mayor and council members. My name is Ron Dreher, Ron P. Dreher, because my son's back here, he's Ron J. I'm here today in opposition of C6 and C7, so I'll get up in C7 and say ditto when I finish. Like Mr. Dunn said a second ago, I incorporate all of what he put on the record in my public comments. For 43 years, I have been part of the city of Reno as a retired police officer, homicide detective. I retired in '99 and took over as a laborer and have been negotiating for RPPA and other members of this city since that time. For 43 years, I've done that, and I still do that. I'm an RPPA active retired member, and I have to tell you, like Tom Dunn said, in 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, the city took on an individual Fisher Phillips firm out of out of Las Vegas, much like they're doing with the Hall Simmons firm, and caused nothing but labor problems for the period of years. That means a lot of years. Major adversarial relations, trips to the Employee Management Relations Board, constantly, bad faith negotiations, constantly. Told Mr. Ricciardi, who was their chief negotiator then, why don't you take your money, go home, and we'll have a contract. What Tom Dunn didn't tell you is after we finished that year and after the city had paid over $750,000 on their way to $1 million, we stopped that. And within 3 weeks, and I have to tell you that, within 3 weeks, we got a contract. Not just the RPPA, but everybody in the city. We had labor peace. The city council members here, the mayor, Shivi, I think Councilwoman Dewar was there as well. Devin Reese, on the other hand, Councilman Reese, was representing the RPPA that time. And so I think you know that. He sat on labor side, and I'm glad that he recused himself because some of the things I was going to ask that you all did was do that. There's so much more that has to be said regarding this. $300,000 or $100,000 now and $200,000 later is a lot of money for an individual that I have had experience with over in other parts of this city. And they weren't pleasant. We have gone back and forth for over 3 years. In my opinion, you're not getting your money's worth. I think the world of Carl Hall. I have a pretty good background with him. But I tell you what, I think you're making a mistake here, paying this gentleman $300,000 over a period of the next couple of years is a lot of money. It's going to cost the city. He does nothing but stall. He doesn't answer emails. He doesn't reply what he's supposed to do under NRS 288-180. I can't say really anything good about him, in my opinion. I'll reserve the rest of my comments until C7. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is that-
Mr. Vice Mayor, we have no additional public comment.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and thank you, public commenters. We'll move on to a presentation from staff.
Good evening, Vice Mayor and council members. Jesse Pewitt, your Labor Relations Manager, here to present on item C6, an agreement for a labor negotiator. This aligns with our strategic priority for governance and organizational effectiveness. And what we're seeking is approval to execute a contract for a labor negotiator with a maximum limit of $100,000 at an hourly rate and not on retainer. This is a one-year agreement with Simons Holland Johnson to act in that capacity. There's been a lot of chatter about this item, and it's a complex issue. So I wanted to cover some things that it is and things that it is not. It is, we'll start with that side first. It is an agreement for general labor contract guidance. Things like language for proposals when we're sitting at the table. It's an agreement for specific labor contract guidance, things like if there's a regulatory change or a change of the law related to procedures, assistance in implementing those procedures. And it's an agreement for a labor negotiator. We don't intend to use these services at every table, but as things become more complex and as things escalate, we may bring them in to offer assistance to us. This isn't an effort to bankrupt any employee association. This isn't an effort to proactively fight. It's not an effort to handle grievances or to handle disciplinary appeals. Those will still be handled through the CBAs and through the city, through those processes that are defined in the CBAs. It's also not an attorney for counsel, which is why it does not require a 6/7 vote. Outside expertise in this space is necessary. Labor issues, laws, and regulations are growing more and more complex. Scrutiny of public agencies is high in this area. And compliance requirements continue to increase in this area. There are specialized expertise. This field is very specialized. Specialized expertise in this area allows the city to be well prepared in the case of high stakes or high risk labor negotiations areas. This also offers risk mitigation. Earlier when I spoke about contract language, this allows us to get to a place where contract language isn't ambiguous, which then leads to disputes based on the ambiguous language. It offers consistency and quality in that we have somebody who is available to us to act in our best interest in resolving those low-level issues or in offering their assistance in getting to a place in these contracts that we can move forward in. This is a best practice across the industry. Public agencies across the nation use this model where they have an outside individual acting as either a labor negotiator or as a expert in this space. I do want to acknowledge that there is an upfront cost, but it's offset by a reduction in risk to long-term liability. There is the up to $100,000 billed at an hourly rate. And having a labor expert on board allows us to potentially avoid costly disputes, penalties, and operational disruptions. I did want to highlight that currently we have 3 open agreements this year. Next year, we have at least 4 open agreements. I say at least because we don't know what the cards hold quite yet for this year. Those contracts may only be 1 year, they may be longer, but at a minimum, we will have 4 open agreements next year. And up on the screen, I do have a recommended motion. This would begin in April of 2026, and I am here for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Pewitt. Other comments, questions? Yeah, Councilmember Dewar.
Yeah, I just as soon open these together, but I am going to talk about both agreements, and I'm going to draw a distinction between them. I totally support what we heard in public testimony. I lived through it. We had very aggressive attorneys that did not, that seemed out against our labor unions instead of working with them to find peace and agreement over and over. And what I did observe is when those attorneys went away, we used an inside person who's not an expert labor negotiation. It was our CFO. It was Robert Chisel. And the difference was that he had the trust of the people. And they believed him, and they were willing to negotiate with him. It didn't take exquisite negotiation skills. He wasn't a lawyer. So my issue is that we have proposed hiring the same, this is one of my issues. We have proposed hiring the same person to be a litigator against the unions, potentially, representing the city, and we're saying that same person is well-situated to negotiate. And I don't happen to agree with that. I don't think, I think it could help to be a lawyer, but maybe we should be hiring a firm that does negotiation, if we're even going to hire outside for this role. Because I think that the internal staff, somebody within our 1,600 employees that you mentioned, must have the trust of our labor unions. And if we don't have that, we should pretty darn well hire that person inside, because this is a constant issue, right? Labor negotiations. This isn't something that just happens very infrequently, periodically. So I'm concerned with both. I think that if Carl, I would support that if they don't have someone on staff, if we get into a litigation, that they would be hiring that on their own, as they often have hired expert counsel to help them with a lawsuit. I'm fine with that, and I don't think that has to come to council. Well, you've put a number over 200,000. Maybe it doesn't have to come to council until it is over 100,000, which the manager has the ability to sign off on. Okay, so I'm totally fine with Carl hiring who he needs if we're in a lawsuit, up to the amount, and then bringing it to council if you need to go over that amount. What I'm not comfortable with is hiring a person to negotiate for us, because they're starting from zero. They don't know these people. They don't know the history. We have to spend time bringing them up to speed about the history, going back 20 and 30 years, which I understand almost anybody would have to. Nobody's been here 20 years, except some of our firefighters, I was going to say. Some of our firefighters have. But I'm not comfortable hiring a person unless they have extensive demonstrated negotiation skills and are willing to be a fair mediator, and we do have some in our town. So that's where I'm standing.
Thank you, Councilmember Dewar. Councilmember Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I fully understand what you're saying. I have I agree with some of the statements, but what I'm understanding is, from my time on here, this isn't something new. We've always had outside counsel in this space. Last time we went through negotiations, we also had outside counsel. And from my understanding, we're bringing this person on as a supplement to the legal team because it is not something that they specialize in. So are we doing something different that we haven't done in the past with outside counsel? And that's the first part. The second part is, we just heard our budget presentation and we're freezing 20 people. I'm absolutely not in favor of bringing on another person that might be subject to budget cuts later on. I think there's an exponential amount of financial burden that comes with hiring somebody. So I think it may look like a big number, but I would imagine that in the long run, it's actually saving money than hiring somebody, because we don't use them all the time. So it's for this particular instance. If you could just clarify for me.
Sure.
Thank you.
So first question, we have used outside. We've used counsel, we've used labor negotiators that aren't counsel. Both have been hit or miss, depending on the space and the timing and how everything worked out. For your second question, I'm going to ask you to repeat it.
I was just wondering about.
It's maybe cheaper to bring in a consultant.
It's not that
I
it's
think.
cheaper, it's just that I don't think our legal team has the expertise needed to do this. That's why we rely on outside counsel. It's very specialized for a specific amount of time. It's not something that we use 365 days a year.
I'm sorry, can I make a recommendation that we go ahead and open up item C7?
Oh, sorry.
So that we get both comments on the record at the same time?
Yeah, do we have to take public
Since it
comment?
seems to be that there's some conflating of the two issues, and I don't want to get into a pickle.
Well, they're for the same person.
They are for the same person,
We
but
do
two
have-
different functions, so.
I just want to make sure
Yeah.
we're not violating any laws. Do we
Yeah,
have to
Yes.
open
Mr. Vice
public
Mayor
meeting?
and Madam Manager, we do have public comment on item C7 as well.
I guess we'll stop deliberation and go to public comment first, and then we can continue on with, and then so we'll go to public comment first, and then we'll continue with deliberation on both item C6 and C7.
Okay, our first public commenter is Eddie Lorton.
George Eddie Lorton, and you know what I'm running for. How you doing? So I ended up now, you heard what I had to say earlier, to where Carl can handle it. I just know that the communication and cooperation, I know our unions, we need them. I don't want to shortcut them, but yet too, they understand the financial situation. So I think they can work together more with Carl. He's done them before. He's talked to him. I remember when Chisel also our finance manager ended up doing it before, and he's not an expert in that field. So sometimes you need a firm, but a giving hand to where we're in it together. You know, our firemen and our police live in our city. They want the best for us too, but they have a family to feed also. So I hope we reject all this, and I think Carl can handle it. And so thank you for your time.
Tom Dunn, followed by Ron P. Trier.
Good afternoon, Mr. Vice Mayor, member of this council. For the record again, Tom Dunn, Vice President, Reno Firefighters Association. You still have firefighters, they're working out of tents and modulars that were designed to be temporary for 5 years. And we're going on 20 years now that we've been living out of those facilities. $200,000 a year could replace the windows in at least 2 of our fire stations, mine included, that has the original windows and blinds from when it was constructed in 1985. $300,000 can hire 2 entry-level firefighters or 3 fire prevention officers, especially as you have more firefighters and other members of our department leaving as we become retirement eligible. You still have 2 fire companies that have not been reopened since the Great Recession in 2008. And ultimately, over this 2-year period of 2005 and 2006, $429,000 can improve several of your fire stations to include signage, paint, and street level marking for safety. Thank you.
Ron P. Trier.
Thank you again, and Mr. Vice Chair and members of the council, Ron P. Dreer, for the record. And first, I'd like to ditto all the comments I put in C6 and move on from there. $300,000 is a lot of money to pay for outside counsel. And having my experience, and I can tell you that in my own opinion, the individual and the firm that you're hiring is not conducive to our negotiation styles. He will spend every penny of the $300,000, $100,000 from C6 and the $200,000 from C7. That is my opinion. I saw him do that in the other associations that we worked with previously over the past 3 years. We've been dealing with Mr. Hall and Simons for 3 years and have a case going to the Supreme Court right now where all he does is file motion after motion after motion. In the Harvard School of Negotiations, there's a good tape, and it's called Getting to Yes. How do you get to yes? You have both parties at a table. You do ground rules. That's how you start. And you go bit by bit through the association. We present proposals. The city presents proposals. Mr. Hall's game opened up the entire contract. Let me spend 8 hours a day at $475 an hour to get through this. And by God, he will get his $300,000 by doing that. He got over $1 million from the other, from the Washoe County School District. I might as well say it because it's public record. That's what's going on here. You're dealing with an individual who doesn't give one iota about negotiating in good faith. If you want someone, and this is out of NRS 288-270, it's called prohibited practices by an employer. If you want somebody that refuses to bargain in good faith, if you want somebody that end runs the bargain, and that means going to you all and saying, geez, this is what you ought to do to get a contract. Go tell those union people how bad they are. He's done that. He's done that. We have EMRB, Employee Management Relation Board complaints against him. We sat through that. I've dealt specifically with that man. I've been negotiating, I told him to his face, you have no idea what you're doing. What you should do is learn how to negotiate in good faith. I'm very, very proud of the Reno Police Protective Association and other bargaining groups in this community that we have worked hard, along with city council, to good, decent collective bargaining agreements. We have one of the best police association contracts in the state of Nevada. You have to know that. We have the best professional peace officers here. It doesn't have to be going backwards to where we were a couple years ago. We don't have to do that. I implore you as the city council to oppose this. It's not worth it. Thank you.
Brian Christensen, followed by Ron Dreer.
Good evening, Mr. Vice Mayor and the council. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me. I'm Brian Christensen, the Reno Police Protective Association president, newly selected as of 2 weeks ago, so this is fun. I am up here opposing both of these measures, and I want to bring this back to the reason why I'm here. I represent people, and this is about the people. We understand the city does need some sort of representation to these many labor contracts and grievances. We agree with our lawyers that Mr. Hall and his team can handle those tasks. Our main concern is the city is already operating on a thin budget. We understand that, me more than most, because I'm also an accountant. All departments have been required to make cuts across the board. Positions have been frozen, 20, and we've actually seen reductions already in our workforce. Actual people have lost their jobs because the budget is so close to being an unrecoverable deficit. This contract is being funded by some of those people who are no longer on our team. If Mr. Hall proves to be well worth the price we're willing to pay, it appears to be a success. In the event all the work we need Mr. Hall to do costs much more than we are estimating in this contract, who will get cut next? Which department will be asked to do even more with even less? Oh, apologies. Public service is not glamorous. None of us are here for the recognition. We're not even here for the money. This contract proves it pays more to be in the private sector and contracted. So any loss of jobs, so someone outside our team, and that team is Reno, so that they can reap the rewards, is a loss in our book. We are a team, all employees of this fine city. When we are working together with the full support of our leadership, we will be able to accomplish seemingly impossible tasks and make the city a great place to live. Thank you very much for your time.
Ron Dreer.
Good evening, Mr. Vice Mayor, members of the council, City Manager Bryant. My name is Ron J. Dreer. I am the attorney for several of the bargaining groups here at the City of Reno. I'm also the chief negotiator for several of those groups. And unfortunately, I have to say we have had a lot of dealings with Anthony Hall and his firm. And I say unfortunately for a reason, is because we can't get to yes with him. We have gotten to yes with you, with the City of Reno, for the last 3 contracts that I've dealt with no issues. Dealing with the 2 men sitting behind me here, and with Norma Santoyo. There has been no issues of getting to yes because we have built trust. Now, why we don't ever get along, well, sometimes we get along, but not often. We are able to pick up the phone and call each other and say, hey, this is a disagreement we're having now. We can handle it this way and be done and move forward. I have dealt with Mr. Hall for 3.5 years, and that cannot happen. There will be no phone calls to get things done. There will be nothing but motions, cases in district court, cases in the Supreme Court, cases at the Employee Management Relations Board. We will be in arbitration, and you will start a war, not you, but by hiring this man, we'll start a war with your labor groups. And there is absolutely no reason to do that. While the fire group, who we support 100%, may not have a contract, if you look, they are the only ones that had to go past negotiations. Everyone else was able to work with your team to get to yes. That's something that we can do. We have negotiations starting again soon that we can handle in several months will be done. We will be able to get to yes, because that's how it works when we have a trust between us. That can happen, has happened, and will continue to happen. Just several weeks ago, I picked up the phone and called Mr. Shipman and said, we have an issue we need to speak about. And it was taken care of within an hour, because that's the kind of relationship we have. But with Mr. Hall, that won't happen. And Mr. Hall currently is representing Alex Velto, the partner to Mr. Reese, in a case in the Supreme Court. He has too much connection to this city and to the city council to be involved here without there being some kind of clarity as to his involvement and why he's here. Mr. Hall, unfortunately, in my experience with him, will cause us nothing but problems. Your labor groups and your employees will be unhappy. This will cause nothing more but strife between all of us when we don't need that. Things have worked well for many years now between the labor groups and the city. We have gotten to yes. We will continue to get to yes. We have absolutely no reason to take $300,000 out of the general fund and give it to Mr. Hall's firm when we had just had a very long, detailed discussion here on the council about how much money there isn't for this city. So respectfully, I ask that you do not vote for this and you vote no and do not hire Mr. Hall. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Vice Mayor, we have no additional public comment registered, and we did not receive any correspondence on this item.
Thank you. We'll move on from any comments or questions from the body. I think Councilmember Anderson. Oh, let's go ahead and move on to the presentation. My apologies, Mr. Shipman.
Oh, yeah. No, thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. No, I just have I'll be very quick. I think it's late and we'll get there. I would say it's kind of ironic we have two Mr. Halls, and I'd like the record to reflect that Mr. Hall, my boss, is Carl, and Mr. Anthony Hall is somebody else. Anyway, okay. So alignment with strategic plan, governance. So just want to frame this. What's happening here from a city attorney perspective is that we have budgetary constraints and operational considerations, the same things that the entire city has. And Carl and our office has decided and determined that it's really impracticable and uneconomical at this point in time to essentially hire a labor attorney in-house. I mean, that's an expensive proposition. That's, as part of that too, ideally, these will be quick negotiations, and we don't want to have to carry that cost over time. So what this offers is an engagement with the Simon Hall Johnson firm that's essentially a $200,000 plug number, and they'll be used on an as-needed basis. So it's hired through the city attorney's office. This is not the city council hiring this attorney directly. In a couple of the other instances that were quoted, I think those were instances where the council hired the outside counsel. This is actually the city attorney that's hiring it. And again, the city attorney is only going to use these services if and when they are needed. So assuming that the negotiation piece does get done and does get done quickly, that will free up this budget for other purposes. So I just wanted to make that clear. Just quickly, under the terms of the agreement, Anthony Hall will be in charge of the services and supervising them, and it's based on potential need. Again, we don't want it to be that we're saying this is going to be spent money. We hope it's not going to be spent money. We're going to do everything in our power to make sure it's not spent money. But if it needs to happen, then it's there. And the term agreement is only for 1 year, so it's not a long-term engagement. It's a time and materials as needed basis. There are the rates, and there's a not to exceed amount of $200,000. And so there's the recommendation and again, if there's any questions, we're available. So.
Thank you, Mr. Shipman. We'll move on to Councilmember Dewar.
Hi, thank you. So here's the challenge. When I spoke before, and even now, I do not know the attorney we're speaking of, Mr. Hall, Anthony Hall. I was speaking generally that it is not good, in my opinion, to mix your litigator, that's your person that's defending you, that's involved in litigation, with the person that's mediating. That's my first point. My second point is that we are not in litigation now. We don't have legal defense services. But if we were in litigation, I would expect you guys to hire who you need to help defend us as you have in the past. What I don't like is anticipating that we will be in litigation. I think that sends a bad message for the negotiations that are about to come up. So it's just a statement of where we are mentally, that we're anticipating being in litigation with our employees. I don't like that. But if it does come to that, you have all the authority you need to hire a additional counsel up to a certain amount. I've already stated this. And if you see it going over that amount, you can come to us and get additional budget authority. So I don't think this is needed. And lastly, I have confidence in our city manager. So if it isn't our former CFO, it is our city manager. I've heard good things, including from the fire. You may think you're at odds. I don't know what you think. They think that you're a good person to talk to. And you are an attorney, and you do come across as genuine. And I think they just as soon talk to you as a person that they've never met, a new person. And I really have a hard time mixing those roles. I really do. I think most lawyers, and again, I didn't know anything about this gentleman, but I am very concerned right now about formally hiring him. I have to tell you, if our folks are coming forward saying that what they've seen is him spin up bills and not get to yes, to use their terms, but I would use the same terms, that most attorneys that are hired for that aren't generally focused on solving problems. They are generally focused, I'd hate to be this level of cynical, but on increasing the payments. They're not wired. They're wired to fight, not wired to negotiate and settle. And that's my opinion. I understand it might not be shared, but I am very uncomfortable about mixing these people, and I think you already have enough authority to do the second item. So that's my perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Dewar. We'll move on to Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. I think it was necessary that we opened both of these items so that we could hear that first, our legal team has expressed to our city manager that they need more talent in this area at this time. So we have to respect that. The way that this was brought on the original agenda, I had a lot of problems with, because I agree with you, Mr. Dewar, that it felt like we were forecasting war for 3 years, and that really bothered me, based on me not being part of any negotiation ever in the past, but me being privy to watching how it affected my family and other people that were working in, public safety. It's very sensitive, and there are feelings. I would say that I think it is unfair for any of us to be able to say we can choose the other person's lawyer. I'm not sure if we ever got involved with any of our labor group's choices on the legal team that they brought to the forefront, but I think that that's a little bit of an overreach on our behalf. I know that we are able to do that, but I wanted to say that if our legal team has requested a specific lawyer, I would like to hear from you why you think he's the best, and why, after hearing what you've heard from the labor groups, why you would continue down that road. But again, I want to say that whoever you're negotiating with, they shouldn't be able to choose who is representing you. So let's just be fair and honest about that. I am very grateful for the clawbacks on this. I'm grateful for the guardrails that you've put on the two numbers. It sounds like we've got more, feedback from the council, but I just wanted to get that on the record in terms of opening up that second item and realizing that this is an actual request that came from inside the House, not from outside, from the council or from the city manager directly.
Thank you, Councilmember Anderson. Councilmember Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Jesse, this question is for you, and thanks for opening up the items together. I'm hearing from my colleague that this is like a matter of, are we mixing lawyer, are we mixing negotiator, one or the other? In my experience, we are negotiating. We're not asking for one or the other, and we're not moving. We still are going to work. I mean, I have every expectation that our city manager and our team is going to be working with our labor groups in the negotiating space. I don't think that either one of these items takes the place of that. So maybe is that accurate? I mean, we are asking for an additional skill set that is brought by the people, the lawyers in this. It's not saying we're not going to have negotiators, we're not going to negotiate. We are still going to do that. And we all have very high expectations that that is going to happen. So
Jesse Pugh, Labor Relations Manager, for the record, that's accurate. I'll continue to be at the table and negotiating with the bargaining groups. I'll continue to resolve issues with the bargaining groups in that space. This is my item, the C6 item is really for support in that space.
So we're not saying we're gonna, moving forward with C6 or C7, we're getting rid of the negotiations, we're not doing anything, we're just gonna hire Mr. Hall, and, I mean, we're still in the process, we're still in good faith, we still believe that we can get there. This is an as-needed basis for 1 year, and I absolutely agree with Councilwoman Anderson. When this was first daylighted, I got calls all over the place, and we had to walk it back a little bit and say, this is actually what we need. So, I mean, that was bad on us, but I think we've gotten to a place where there are a lot of guardrails on this contract.
Yep, that's accurate. Yeah, we originally posted the draft agenda, right? It had sort of that blanket 300,000 total. We heard, got a lot of feedback, heard it, and retooled it to reflect what we needed.
Thank you. We'll move on to Councilmember Anderson again, yeah.
Sorry,
Oh,
Mr.
you're
Pruitt, can you elaborate a little bit more on what you mean by you'll still be doing the work and then this is just purely for support? Can you talk to us about when support kicks in?
Yeah, so one of the examples I used earlier was related to contract language. I'm not an attorney, so I can't write foolproof contract language that leaves language that's ambiguous within the contracts. This would shore up that space, just as an example. So we would get contract language that is unambiguous and direct, and that would then theoretically lead to less potential issues down the line with that language.
Okay. That's all I've got.
Can I say something?
Yeah, City Manager Bryant.
Thank you. I just want to clarify some facts and address what Councilmember Anderson referenced, which was the draft agenda, just to kind of tell the whole story so everybody hears it from me. So the way our agenda items work is that we have a system called PrimeGov. We post draft agendas about 2 weeks in advance of a council meeting so that we can brief council members and still comply with the open meeting law. And in that system, the employees put staff reports. Those staff reports have to be reviewed by probably a half dozen to a dozen different people, depending on the topic. An employee went in and pulled the draft staff report and shared it. So we were not ready, it had not been vetted, it wasn't the right intent, it was kind of a placeholder. And so that unnecessarily caused a lot of heartburn. So it was never an intent to be a fight, never an intent to forecast that we were gearing up for a fight. It was just a draft, and if you looked at a lot of drafts, we make a lot of changes between the draft and the final. So after talking with a lot of labor leaders, I reached agreement with most that we would walk it back to $100,000 for contract support, $200,000 for litigation. I had cobbled those together, but there was some angst around that, and I understand that. But what I also know is that our city attorney's office doesn't have a labor leader. Yes, I am an attorney, I'm not a labor lawyer. I know enough to be dangerous about labor law, but not enough to get us out of a pickle. And I think a responsible agency has an attorney that helps them both contract and litigate when necessary. And we have a contract now with Simons and Hall. We do investigations occasionally. You're right, Councilmember Doerr, I do have a signing limit up to $100,000. We are in litigation today with IAFF 731. We have EMRB complaints and we have arbitration complaints. So litigation is occurring, and our city attorneys do not have the type of background. Labor law is not a generalist. They are very specialized lawyers. And a city of our size can get into trouble real quick if we don't know what we're doing. So I just want to say on the record, there's no intent to pick a fight. I would love it if we didn't spend $1. I actively do work with all the labor partners, and I am very direct and upfront with them. And I expect them to be upfront and direct with me, and when people aren't, I get upset. And they tend to know that I'm upset. So I think we have a very good relationship, but good lawyers keep a good relationship. And so that's kind of the genesis of how we got here. And that's the reason we're asking for it. And I walked it back the year, and I understand the reticence. I really do. But I also know that operating without a good lawyer and operating without someone with that background during contract negotiations could be very detrimental to this organization, and frankly, we don't have any money to lose.
So question for you, if I may, Vice
Thank you
Mayor.
for clarifying. Yeah, we'll go with Councilmember Dewar.
So let me understand something. You've already hired Mr. Hall.
Up to the $100,000 limit.
Okay. So have you surpassed the $100,000? I mean,
No,
are you?
we're at 60.
Okay.
Last I looked, we're at 60.
Okay.
But we now have 2 more open contracts this year, and we will have minimum of 4 next
Well,
year.
it's to my point that the lawyers can hire whoever they want to help them with whatever they need in specialized counsel. And when they're threatening to go over 100,000, they come to us for permission to go over that amount. And I think
It's actually
everything's.
my understanding they need contract approval at this point,
Why?
because, John,
Yeah, so just as a background, so this is an instance where if the city attorney can't provide those services, we have to go to outside counsel.
Which
to
you've
get
already
that.
done.
And there's a provision under NRS 41 that says these are the circumstances that you can do that, and to get an attorney to provide a legal defense. And then we have to come to the council for a budget for that. We basically make the determination, and then you have to fund that. So the problem you run into is if you get into a pinch, that can really cause a problem if it's a fast-moving litigation, if an arbitration.
We
and that
do
sort of
meet
thing.
every 2 weeks, but I guess what I'm understanding, you do have a budget for outside counsel in your budget.
No, not at this point.
no, that's
what
what
do you-
this would do. That's why we're
Well,
here.
I'm unclear. I mean, you have hired all kind of outside counsel, whether it's opioid or this or that.
So like the opioid, no, I mean, that's all contingency fee.
All right.
Right, so, a lot of the internal employment stuff is more of an investigating function than like a legal counsel function. We generally don't hire a lot of outside legal counsel. And when we do, we're basically in front of you generally. I'm trying to think of, is there an instance where you can think of where we hired?
I'm not privy to what you hire out for 35,000 or 50,000 or
We
whatever.
don't get a lot of those, it's not like we have a lot of that, or even, I'm trying to think of when we did that. We might hire for like an opinion letter. I think there was one for like an energy deal for $10,000 that
We did that. I think it was 5,000, but yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions or comments? I had a couple. I didn't want to jump in there before my colleagues did, but I was curious. It sounds like there was a statement that Simons Hall was already on retainer for services. Can you clarify whether that's true or not?
Yeah, so, and Jesse can speak to it, but.
I guess I'm asking you because I understand in a mediator role, that's different, but are they providing legal services and
Like
assistance to your
investigation
office?
types of services there's a handful of investigators in town that belong to these law firms that do fact-finding and investigations, and Simon's
And we
Hall-
have the arbitration open.
And there is an arbitration open, yes, with the firefighters currently that we're not handling, so yes.
Okay, and then I think I asked a similar question during my briefing, but for item C7, why can't that money in the hourly rate be paid from the risk management fund instead of the general fund?
Ultimately, if the money's not there, then it can be moved from the risk management fund I mean, it's all, at the end of the day, it's money, right? And where it's located, it can be moved, and that would be part, so if we didn't have money in another fund, we could probably get it from the risk management fund through an augmentation or through a redistribution.
And I don't know, I could have this wrong, but I could remember we approved $5 million moving from the general fund to the risk management fund maybe a year ago.
Just for the record, Vice Mayor Martinez, we can use risk fund when there's litigation that we have lost. Typically, we don't use the risk fund to cover legal fees in advance of a loss.
Yeah, that's normally for paying for settlements, or if there's a judgment. Risk fund also pays for insurance, excess liability insurance. We do have, like, claims. We have a claims function where people file, like, claims with the city. Oh, my sewer backed up. Oh, hey, your car hit my car. And so we pay to have those settled. But there's a policy on the fund about what that money can be used for, and it can't be used for labor purposes. It would have to be moved, I mean, the money could be moved over for that.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it's still coming out of the general fund.
it's still
regardless,
coming
right?
out of the general fund at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I was just trying to see if there was another way to avoid pulling more dollars out of the general fund, which is the one that we're struggling with, and we just had a presentation from Director Van Buren on. I don't have other comments at this point. but
Mr.
we'll go
Vice
to-
Mayor, I
yeah,
just wanted to-
Councilmember Taylor.
For some dialogue purposes, I think in my briefing, I asked where the money was coming from because there was a concern, obviously, and I think Jesse or somebody might have told me that it was a savings from the director that we didn't hire. So is that accurate?
Correct. I mean,
It's the Assistant Director for Human Resources that we have funded but unfilled.
Okay, so I just wanted to add that to the conversation. Thank you.
Okay, that helps. Yeah, Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you for reminding me of that, because I remember that conversation. So this is another, just for everybody in the audience, I think out of fairness, we're holding a position in HR currently, which should help us in the general fund make up for these dollars in this timeframe. I want to know how did we get to 200,000 on this recommendation? Why is that the number that's there, and it's not we're just working up towards 100,000 or 200,000? Why has that number been chosen?
It was a ballpark. We don't know. It's the same conversation we had around the waste management franchise fee. This is painful, and it takes it's a lot of brain damage, and we don't want to come back here in 6 months when we know we have, excuse me, we have 3 or 4 open now, and we will have at least 4 open January, February of next year. So, and the contract would go April 1 to March 30th, I believe, is what we set it for. So it gave us enough room, but again, you know, it's a ballpark. We don't want to spend that money.
And historically, I mean, just kind of a broader, what you don't want to do is hire a firm and it's on a time and materials basis, and then it starts ripping, and they're generally like 30, 60 days behind in their billing. And you don't want to get into a position where, oh, we're over budget, and then you have to come back to the council to get that amount ratified or to get the budget augmented when the work has been done. And you're not in a position to do anything but approve it, even though you might not want to approve it. So we want to have a budget that's large enough, so if we have something that goes through there, we're not like, you know, fearful that we're going to run over the budget right away. Ideally, this money doesn't get used, and if it does get used, maybe, I mean, to the extent that it doesn't get used and it needs to go to the negotiation a little bit more, that hopefully would be in front of you to say, hey, let's move some of this back over here or move it to some other item. That 200,000 in litigation, that can go pretty fast if it really gets heated up.
Do you have any other comments? Okay. Yeah,
Mr.
Councilmember
Vice
Taylor.
Mayor,
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we might be able to take a 15-minute recess before moving on this item. I know we're missing a quorum, and I have to, if I could have 10 minutes, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I know we have some folks in the audience, so maybe 10 minutes, or we'll be
10
back
minutes
at
is perfect.
6:10, please.
Yeah, if I were to leave right now, we'd lose a quorum,
Yes,
so,
of course. Yeah, let's take a short break.
thank you.
Yeah.
We'll reconvene at 6:10.
Thank you. Motion for item C6.
Mr. Vice Mayor, I believe the motion for, what, go ahead. Okay. I have it right here too. I move to approve authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement for labor negotiation services with Simons Hall Johnston PC with the maximum limit of $100,000 for a term of 1 year beginning April 1, 2026.
Do you have a motion? Is there a second?
Second for discussion.
Okay, is there any discussion?
I mean, I'm not comfortable with it. I think it sends a wrong message. I think our team should be front and center at the table. I may have a different opinion about the next item, but for this item, that's where I'm at.
Thank you. Councilmember Ebert, you have your light on? You're just ready to vote? Okay, perfect. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No.
Looks like motion passes 4-1.
Are you ready for item C7, Mr. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, just making sure that that's the vote you recorded, Madam Clerk. Okay, perfect. Yeah, we'll move on to item C7, if we can get that recommendation up. Yeah, that one's perfect. Thank you so much, Mr. Shipman.
So, if I may, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Yes, Councilwoman.
I understand that the city's already spent $60,000 with Mr. Simons Hall Johnson PC thus far, and I'm willing to validate that and give them more to work with. I'm not willing to give up $200,000. I'd be willing to do $100,000, and then if they need more, they can come back, but at least they're authorized to have this council helping them on their various cases. That's where I'm at, and I'd make a motion for that.
Is that your motion?
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
No, go ahead. It's fine.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thanks so much, Madam Clerk and staff, for the presentations. We'll close the item out and move on to agenda item C8. And I believe this is also the city attorney's office.
And Mr. Vice Mayor, for the record, we do not have any public comment on this item, have not received any correspondence.
Perfect. Does council require a presentation?
I will be brief.
Okay.
Adam K.